Kevin. Thank you so much for being here. It's so exciting to be at the start of season 2 of Loki. I've watched the first 2 episodes, which episode 2 is your episode, which is great to talk about. Where did, I guess for you, Kevin, where did sort of season 1 end and season 2 start, or was there no kind of stop and start point? Is it kind of straight in?
As far as the process,
Yeah.
like going in, we went straight in. I mean, we started during season 1. Tom and I started having a lot of conversations as we were shooting about what season 2 could look like. We knew it would be coming.
Yeah.
By the time we were doing additional photography for that season 1, we were already like fully also starting to write season 2. So it happened pretty quickly. And you know, it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
But it never stopped for us. We were constantly working at it.
Is it important? Because obviously, you know, Tom's played this character for so long, and if anybody knows the character he does, and kind of knows the parameters of the character, I guess, as well, how important is it to have him part of the journey of where this character goes?
And Dan will be able to speak to this as well with having worked with him on this. Like, he's a true producing partner in this, from development through seeing it through to the end. Like, he and I shared an office in Pinewood. It was like the door in between. It was like Kramer. He would like come in with ideas, but it was constant. He would join us in the writers' room at various stages to kind of like help guide the ship. His fingerprints are all over this, and I think drives why it is so good, because he's putting his heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
So we all equally want to put our hearts and souls into it.
Well, you can physically see how much he's enjoying being in this space and inhabiting this character. Even if he's walking down a corridor, you know, it's done with such kind of intent, and it kind of seeps out the screen, I think.
Did he ever tell you, like, this is how I would?
Yeah, I mean,
not like that.
But it was never as direct as that. I mean, that's where Tom is very open, you know, and very, you know, collaborative in terms of, you know, having a deep understanding of Loki, you know, well beyond the years that we've been focusing on it, and kind of knowing, you know, what Loki's gone through and what he would do. And so he would, you know, in a sense, he would say, well, would Loki say that or he wouldn't say that? But you'd still have a conversation about why he would or wouldn't, or how he would say it, or what would be the emotional way to kind of do that. And so, you know, his brain works on the acting level, the producing level, the storytelling level. It's pretty amazing.
And Dan, in terms of coming into, you know, talk about having your sort of your fingerprint on things. You've had your kind of creative fingerprint on so many enormous films that we've loved from the Marvel Universe over the years, sort of thing. Congratulations on all that work. And stepping into kind of the director's shoes on this, with this wonderful team of directors across the whole season. How does it work? Do you all kind of get around a table and talk about who's doing what, so that there are kind of, you know, because it's got to gel, it's got to feel fluid, they've all got to have a connective tissue while still allowing you to inject your creative input into it.
That's exactly what we did. There was a conference room at the studio that we basically lived in and ate in and, you know, slept in, but it was something that, you know, we would always get together. And I think that was the only way to keep the whole show on track, because, you know, we would, you know, you'd concentrate, you'd focus on an episode or two, you know, in a meeting, you know, depending on what it needed. But, you know, all the directors would be assembled, you know, the actors, if they were in that episode, would be assembled, and they would, you know, we would all be there. You know, so if it was for my episode, it was for Justin Aaron's episode, it was Kaz's episode, we were all in the same room together.
Sometimes Cass would start showing up to ones that weren't
even
theirs, because it just became a
Yeah.
very like communal, like collaborative thing.
Yeah.
Tom always described it as like we need synchronized watches, like getting everyone's watches synchronized.
Do you shoot episode by episode? Or is it not as kind of clean cut as that? Is there?
Yeah, you try to weight it towards that, but then you'd find that, you know, schedule-wise, if you were in one set was built, you'd kind of go and shoot the different episodes and clean up that set.
Yeah.
Especially a time travel show like this, where we're bouncing back and forth
Yeah.
between. It just there's a certain level of you know.
Yeah.
Which set is it? Which
Yeah.
time period
Yeah.
is it?
Which-
Are we dressed for
There
the
were
right time period?
there were a few days where I remember Justin and Aaron would wrap and leave, and then midway through the day, Casper would come in because he would have to pick up certain things.
Passing
in
the
it.
baton.
And I think we certainly had days where you were shooting, and then us and Justin and Aaron would all run upstairs and start working on scripts for other things, like constantly kind of
keeping the ball rolling.
yeah.
Well, how would you describe episode 2?
How would you describe it? It's the calm before the storm. I think
Yeah,
you come
that's
into
good,
the
yeah.
season where you're kind of finishing up some of the story from the first season, and then everything slows down a little bit. You get to see where the characters are at, what they're feeling, and then it just ratchets right back up again.
There's some really lovely moments in this episode, though, that I really, really like. One of the things that I really like this episode it allows is a little bit of a kind of moment with Tom and with Owen in terms of that kind of double act.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that seeing that kind of relationship, from where it started in season 1 through to this, and there's, where they're sat kind of almost like detectives at their desk, and it's lovely because they're given time to kind of, for these characters to really play with each other. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about developing that relationship and working with those actors and how much freedom, I guess, they were given to kind of play with the timing of each other and,
Yeah, I think they both had a great relationship. Both the actors had a great relationship along with the characters. But you're in a situation where it was this collaborative process. That we were all together as we were kind of formulating the scripts, and then there was always this sense of anybody could pitch an idea. There was this freedom to it, and so part of it going through the story was understanding and working with the actors and understanding. Is this a line that they would say? Is this honest for my character?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, that's what helped us, kind of working with them, and the freedom
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they
yeah.
could interject or we kind of question it. And something that as seeing how the relationship grows, and again, this episode 2 is the perfect time to take that beat and understand that and see, where knowing where we left them on the last season and, what that relationship is now, or where, Loki was on a tight leash in the first season, and they were kind of respecting each other, they were listening to each other, but now you're seeing the respect growing, the relationship growing, the trust growing between them, which I think is one of the great things throughout episode 2, is that seeing just within that episode how they're accepting each other.
Yeah, so much of season 1 it was them bumping heads, which was fun. Like, it was fun to watch, but I think that's 100% true. It's just that season 2 allows them to actually start getting on the same page.
There's a kind of mutual respect there, almost, in a way.
Yeah, I think it's trust. You've got a TV agent that didn't trust Loki at all, and then you've got Loki who couldn't open himself up and to trust anyone because eventually he would get pushed away just by his own misdeeds, and you've got it's the odd couple that are somehow developing this friendship.
And you really see that as well in that scene at the kind of desks, but then also when they're in that kind of interrogation sort of chamber, as well, where the first scene of that about where Brad kind of says about, reminding Loki that he's a villain, and that kind of conversation as well, which is great. That's a brilliant scene. I love that. And then when Tom goes back in and Mobius is at the door, sort of thing. It's really great. You can see that they've kind of, they're working together, whereas before they weren't. And this is what's kind of really great to kind of see. The sets are, I could just sort of almost watch the episodes twice, because just to really focus and luxury in the incredible sets that we see. How much of it is real? Is it all real, in terms of, it feels that it's a physical thing that's there, whether it's the old school tills that are in the burger joint that Sylvie's working in, or it's the machines that Ken's working with, all that kind of stuff. It all feels and looks real.
The irony being, with your background,
how
much of this episode particularly was real.
Yeah, people came when I first showed up on set, or everyone came up and was like, your episode has the least amount of visual effects of all the other episodes. Like, it's ironic.
Was that deliberate?
Close to, it's not the least. But it's close.
Was that deliberate?
Well, I think the show is very grounded, and,
Yeah.
and you're building sets, and that in a sense it's intentional because the actors can now live in a set, and they can all the set dressing, everything is just something you go up and touch and kind of manipulate.
And also, but I mean, and you weren't brought on board because you had this great background in VFX, and I think that was one of the great things was we would be in these VFX reviews in season 1, and just like Dan's got such a story brain. Like every VFX decision was coming from a place of deep story rabbit holes that we were like, this is what like so much of Loki and all of our team gets excited about is those details in that world building. And so it was like, I think there was so much through the season of trying to figure out directors' assignments, and it was just more, personality and like what was going to match, and less of the technical side of things, which was exciting.
I'd like to be privy to the conversations that are had about the creation of the machines that are used. So when Loki goes in to do the kind of the interrogation type thing, it's like part Hoover, part lawnmower,
the gizmo.
part kind of like
Kevin's favorite thing of the season.
But you kind of going, oh, I've got one of those in the garage kind of thing. But it kind of seeps you in a familiarity or a reality almost in a way. Sort of
I mean, even when we started designing the sound for that, or just thinking about it, before it even got to design, just really thinking about it, we were sharing like hour-long YouTube videos of diesel engines that made certain kinds of sounds, and the sound of the cube, like different degaussing magnetic device. Like it's just it's fun. Like that's the fun stuff, and so much of it starts with Castro, who's our production designer and also a staff writer and director of this season as well. But I think everybody just gets to kind of find those details and kind of build to it.
You mentioned sound, and I had such a great time chatting with Kate and Natalie for the last season sort of thing about just about creating that world sonically and stuff as well. And Natalie's back on board for this season with the score. So do you mind talking a little bit about kind of coming in, because there are elements where you will bring things through, but there's also a whole new amount of cues and pieces that need to be created, sort of thing. So what are the conversations that you have with Natalie, across the board, and specifically for your episode as well? And also want to talk to you about the Janis Joplin track at the end, which is a great choice.
Great. I think it's with the initial meeting, and again, we're all collaborating, we're all in the room together, but it's sitting down and talking about the tone of the episode, what each scene means, from a sonic standpoint, for creating an emotion, and then whether or not it needs to pull back or go a little bit more, just to kind of help with the emotion or the pace or the speed, and Natalie is she's got this amazing instinctual concept of that, and then just some of the pieces that she comes up with is just what I heard. It goes back to season 1, but when I heard the Eliath episode with the Flight of the Valkyrie variation of that, I'm like, holy cow! It's because we for months there was nothing on top of it, and then suddenly like, oh my God, that's like 1,000 times better, but already being amazing.
And we had going into season 2, we knew she was coming back, and Tom and I had sat down with her.
Yeah. And
we're just like, Kate's not back. Michael Waldron, our head writer, wasn't coming back, and we kind of just went like, we're the continuity. Like you're part. Like you are a huge part of what people loved about this, and so there was just a discussion of like, this world, this show, these characters, and trying to kind of like set her free. There was a lot of finding in those first 4, because so much is falling apart at the TBA, and so we talked a lot about withholding.
Yeah.
That there is a lot of they're going to try something out and it's going to go wrong, and that like kind of finding this rhythm that you can almost feel the momentum getting going, and it's going to stall out, and that this was all for the delayed gratification of where we could then go down the road. And it was something that Natalie really got excited about, and I think Tom had shared with her, as he did with all of us, a copy of the 4 Quartets, T.S. Eliot. And Natalie, and I would love to hear her talk about that, but I think she found it like really moving, and it unlocked something in her head about what this season was and could be, and what we were trying to do with it.
There's an amazing cue with Sylvie and Loki in the burger joint. That particular cue, it's got a kind of almost like old school romance kind of vibe to it. It's absolutely beautiful. And it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's like nothing else we've really heard.
Yeah.
And so it tells us, it's telling part of the story in a really subtle way, but just kind of like, you're like, oh wow. It's a beautiful piece of music. It's, I mean, that's not really not a question at all.
No,
it's just
and
an
I think
observation.
though, and it's pulling on. There's the nickel harper that like is just so tied to Sylvie's character in that, and like so there's, and it's just part of what Natalie does so well is there's those really ancient organic instruments, then paired with really sci-fi cool synth and theremin and all this, and it all melds together into different things. But sometimes you pull some of those out, let that ride, then pull out that organic stuff, ride with the synth, and she just has a really keen instinct on when to kind of let things go,
and letting it complement the scene and the performances too, because the idea with that was very little to no dialogue until they come to it, come closer to each other. But it's like, you're feeling, the music's describing what Tom's feeling on his face, and her, his angst of like, what's going to happen, and she's like, oh, what's going to happen with my life, and it's just all comes together.
I love the whole set design of that. The whole scene is absolutely awesome. It's so great. My granddad used to have a grocery shop, and he had those exact tills. It's what freaked me out.
Yeah. It's great.
There's we had a McDonald's archivist who was like helping Castro find all of this stuff, because it doesn't exist. A lot of it doesn't exist anymore. It's not like McDonald's isn't like Marvel where we have a big warehouse with all of our sets and props. Like we were just trying to track all of that stuff down in the world.
Wow. What about the Janis Joplin track, in terms of, is it always the case where you can go, I'm going to have a needle drop at the end of my episode, or is it, what's the kind of conversations around that?
It started as a, it's the episode, the piece in 1983, so it was started as an idea for an homage to kind of the 80s shows, and, like a Say Anything, kind of push in across the parking lot. So it started with that. And kind of the scene formed around that idea, and then the truck pointed out away from McDonald's, leaving her her life behind there, and ready to leave, telling, saying, will she be there tomorrow? And she's saying yes, and no, she won't be. So it kind of screams a little ballad to go on top of it, right? And so it's starting with that, and then it was kind of finding music that kind of fit the mood of the piece, and then this design of it. But I think what took the forefront was finding what Sylvie would listen to. I think everything we do is always driven off of what a character would say, or why they would say it, or what they're believing. And it's the same thing. We had like some Pat Benatar stuff, we had some Phil Collins stuff, and it's just like because we're in '83, so I was kind of really looking for like something '80s, and then Sylvie wouldn't listen to that.
No.
Yeah, you
listen
try
to
it all.
older. She's gonna listen to something older.
And it was really interesting because like we had that running list then of trying to figure out exactly what it would be, and had gone to Sophia because she also had a playlist throughout that she would listen to, and I think we were circling the Janis Joplin track, and it was on her list too, and it was like, that works out pretty well then. Well, that's it right there.
Yeah.
Is it a case as well, like when you put it down, when you put it in the edit and you see it and you go, it feels right?
Yeah, it fit the mood. I mean, it fit, sonically, it kind of, it just worked. It's one of those ones you kind of know it. There's like, there's the one where we had In the Air Tonight that worked, the drum whip came on. Like,
there you go.
And you're kind of like, it's like, why am I watching Miami Vice right now? This is not where we're going. This is not the choice.
Yeah.
Well, and it's always a good gauge too, is like, Natalie is so good, you kind of want her to score everything.
Yeah.
And when that slotted in, she was like, that's what it should be.
It had to be a female artist as well, totally, for Sylvie. It had to be,
Janis Joplin is just completely
She's
would
so
be speaking
perfect.
to her.
It's like I think whenever it came up, or Emma, our editor, would always be like, yes, it's Janis, it's Janis, yes, it's Janis.
I remember talking...
Putting her foot on the scale for sure.
I remember,
right, it's great.
Yeah, it's so good. I remember talking to Tom kind of, way back in kind of early Loki years, before the TV show sort of thing, and we were talking about music that he would listen to, you know, to get him into kind of, you know, the Lord of Mischief mode. And he was talking about things like Prodigy, the Firestarter, and things like that. But but he's a different Loki now, and I can't imagine that really being, you know, in his playlist now in terms of what Loki would listen to now. I think he's mellowed out. I think he's.
There was on season 1, and I think this is carried over. There was a track from college.
Okay, yeah.
Called "Will You Kiss Me First," which is a very Drive-esque.
Okay, yeah.
Heartfelt, heart on the sleeve song.
Yeah.
And I remember when that started going into rotation, I was like, "This is a very different God of Mischief." He's moved to a new place.
Yeah. He's found a kind of he's found a new emotion.
He's trying to
pull it out.
He's trying to emote. He's trying to pull it out now. Yeah.
What can you tell us? You know, when someone like me asks you to describe this season, you know, I've seen the first 2 episodes of it. Such a fan of the show, such a fan of kind of the worlds that you create. But what can you tell us about this season?
I think, without spoiling anything, I think we knew what we were able to see what the fans were really responding to in season 1. And I think we went into season 2 with a great sense of responsibility of not just trying to go back and play the hits, but deepen the world and the characters that they were responding to, and keep it unexpected, because so much of what people liked about season 1 was how unexpected it was, not just in the time travel, but what it was doing with the characters, what it was doing with Loki and where he was going. And I think it was a deepening of that, and it's a continuing of those themes that I think Kate and team had set up so well in season 1, that search for identity. It isn't just like you wake up and then go, "Oh well, I found it. This is me." It's a constant search, and I think the thing with this was throwing Loki into that pressure cooker, and you can think that you've changed. You can say that you're these certain things, but it doesn't really mean anything until it's put to the test and you see how people are going to act. Loki, Sylvie, the TVA, Mobius, everybody.
It's so lovely hearing kind of how important the fans are, you know, to you know, even in a discussion point of view of what the season should be. But I wondered how different that was from what you saw it being before you saw the reaction from fans, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Was it much different, or?
No, I think we knew what we liked in season 1. Which was the philosophy. It was slowing things down. It was like the cop stuff was really fun. Putting Loki into these interesting positions with Sylvie. Like, as we were making it, those things were like really big aha moments. And it was more of a sense of, will the audiences embrace this? Mm-hmm. That when they did, we went, great, gloves are off now. Now we can like really run with it. Yeah. Which I think was what was exciting about it. Mm-hmm.
What's the most exciting thing for you within your episode that you're excited to share with fans? That you're kind of like, you were like, oh, I'm you know, really glad that that's in my part of it, that I can.
I think it's the scenes we talked about. I think it's the scenes the relationship scenes, and you know, for me, you know, working with the actors on those scenes and kind of, you know, who are amazing on their own, and just kind of like, you know, just kind of fine tuning and just kind of getting, you know, some of the, like, you know, the interrogation just right, and kind of speeding up, slowing that down. I'm incredibly proud of those scenes. I think they turned out amazing.
They're great. Yeah.
And it's introducing new characters as well, like Obi. Oh, what a great character. I mean, just kind of.
I think quickly going to become a lot of people's new favorite Marvel character.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the Deleeuw cover I want. Definitely. But in terms of that casting, you know, of new characters coming in, you've got to be careful, like, I guess, in terms of not bringing too much in to the world. Is that a conversation that you have with regards to?
Well, and it was in those kind of like story sessions that we would have with the cast. Key had just come in. Everything Everywhere All at Once was kind of starting to spread. It was picking up that steam. And I think for a lot of people that could have been really intimidating to come into an ensemble, especially one with like Tom and Owen, where they already have such a great rapport. And it was just sort of like instantaneously in those rooms, you could see what is natural to Key was just this new ingredient. It wasn't like doubling up on anything. It wasn't stepping on anybody's face. It just felt so natural and was like, he could have been there in season 1 just as easy.
He does, because even sort of the way that he communicates with some of the other characters, you know, where he's going, oh, it's never going to work because I wrote it, or, you know, or when he gets asked for his autograph on the TV, and it's just his performances are so natural and so, but embedded in the world.
And he's given such difficult stuff to work. Some of that dialogue gets coming through, and it does. It feels very natural.
And you can follow it, and it's fun. You know,
What are you know, in terms of the world that you I mean, you still inhabit that world, you know, of visual effects, but bringing that knowledge and that wealth into this, even though so much of the episode was real sort of thing, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you had learned within that world that you brought to directing this episode of Loki?
I think it's back in the day, you know, and I think I had this proclivity for the story aspects of it, but when I would work on a shot, the visual effects shot, I would try to put as much story. I would try to do way too much into one shot, and suddenly there's this overblown thing when it's supposed to be this character walking from one side of the room to the other. Now, all it needed to be was the character menacingly walking across, but you know, it just got too much in there. And so, I think, you know, as I learned, and you know, I had great mentors over the years, and you know, kind of understanding how much of a story you really need to tell. You know, I think that's kind of what I brought along from the visual effects side in. Yeah, which really isn't visual effects, but
it's storytelling. Yeah. What have you got? Not your most proudest moment, but something that you're most proud of in terms of what you've given us from that world.
Well, I think I like we got the opportunity to take Loki, you know, back to his roots a little bit. And again, it was something that, again, it's story, right? In my brain, you know, it's like thinking, you know, Loki came out of season 1, and he's, you know, kind of hasn't been able to use his magic. He's not balanced, right? Everything that's happened to him. And so, you know, coming into this season, then he's now trying to reconcile that. He's kind of trying to reconcile, you know, kind of in a way who he is, you know, in terms of, you know, I was that evil guy, but now I'm not quite that. But it's okay that, you know, so the powers that were not necessarily rejected but held back, that's a part of me. I can understand that, and I can push it. You know, I don't want to go too far because Thor will show up and I'll be in trouble. But so that's, you know, something I thought was a lot of fun. And then, you know, then design those sequences and with, you know, the horns and.
Well, I was good, specifically to those sequences. So much of that was not in the script in that form. There was a lot of different paths that took of Brad trying to escape from his own premiere, sometimes getting apprehended in the alley. There was all sorts of different angles. And it was when Dan came on board and really just started working with his team on that and boarding that out and dreaming up big ideas. And so it's like so much of that Loki mischievous side coming back out came through just that process of, here's how we do this, here's how we make it exciting, and develop character.
Yeah, and I think that was the shift, I think, because a lot of the other films, you know, we were going for that big battle, you know, we're going for character, you know, and you design those by, you know, which character fights again, how the powers complement each other and things like that. So you start getting a deeper understanding of what superhero powers are and how they work, but that doesn't work for a Loki show. You just can't have a straight ahead chase. You know, you need to turn it into something where it's a chase, and you know, Brad thinks he's tricked Loki, he's gotten away.
And that's really what's going to get him upset because he really can't be outsmarted.
So now, you know, now Loki, you know, is like, okay, you know, I could just catch you because I'm a god, but now you're going to play with the food. You're going to pay for it a little bit.
I'm going to play your own game, basically. It's so great. I haven't seen the end of this season, but I mean, is there? Are we getting more? Can I ask you that? I don't know. Someone could throw me out of the room immediately.
So, this is what I've been saying. Seasons 1 and 2 were definitely conceived as 2 chapters of the same book. And after season 1, we tortured people with that cliffhanger. And I think we always thought there's got to be we've got to fulfill this story by the end of this. And so I think it was about telling a complete story. But with this world and these characters, there are so many other books on that shelf that like I could not wait to take off and like start figuring out. So I think we'll see how they feel about this, but it would be a pleasure to dive back into this world again.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure to dive back in with the episodes I've seen. Congratulations.
Thanks
for your time. Thank you
you
very much.
Likewise.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.